maybe someone else knows where this scripture is. We just mentioned it in church the other day too. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. That's one of my favorite scriptures because I love knowledge. I love knowing things, but it's so good to remember that this is the way I picture it because I see things in pictures. Knowledge puffs up, so I picture like one of those blow-up houses at a party, which is super fun as long as the air's in it. But when the air lets out, it's like terrifying because you could get stuck in there. But love builds up, so I picture that as like a firm foundation. So it's a good, thank you, honey. That's a good reminder that even as we learn things, if we don't have that basis and that foundation, and so much of what we're going to talk about tonight is about foundations in our health. If we don't have that foundation in love, that's really the why behind the what. So I want to just do a quick review of the 5 paradigm shifts that we talked about last time. Do you guys like to be quizzed? No, I don't ask. Anybody want
Only
to?
if I get to use my notes that
You
say
may
all the
use
5
your
things.
notes. You may. So paradigm shift number 1 is get to the why behind the what. And the picture we have of this is if you're driving the car and your little signal, what do you call it?
Idiot light.
Idiot light. I was trying to think of a nicer word. Your alerting light comes on. You don't want to just go clip the thing off and say, oh good, I made the light go off. You want to find out why. Why is the light on? So that's really the focus of that. 2 is what we're going to be talking about tonight, that we were created metabolically flexible. So I'm going to leave it at that right now because we're coming back around to that. 3 is that our direction is more important than our location. And this is really important to remember as we begin to learn more and progress, because sometimes we can feel discouraged and say, oh, I still have so far to go. But if you're heading in the right direction, that's the most important thing. And that picture with the vehicle that we talked about last week is if you find that you're lost, to deny that you're lost doesn't help you, but to panic doesn't really help either. The best thing to do is stop, figure out where you are, get help if you need it, get the car heading in the right direction, and start going that way. And that's the most important thing we can think about. So if you ever feel yourself along this path, wherever you are in your health, feeling discouraged, check yourself and say, wait, am I going in the right direction? Even if it's like the tiniest little step in the right direction, that is really awesome because that would get you where you're going. The fourth paradigm shift is we were designed to be as a spirit, soul, and body. And I won't go into any more detail on that tonight either, other than to say that the first class that I taught when the Lord kind of brought this to me was called The Weight of Glory. And it's 15 sessions, and Alicia helped me get it up on YouTube, and it's coming every Thursday, a new one is coming out. That class really delves into this 4th paradigm shift. Pretty much that whole class is about being well, spirit, soul, and body. And it really goes into the soul realm. And I shared a little bit of my testimony last time that when I was younger, and even through some of my adult years, I struggled with an eating disorder. Some of that was physical. When I realized later some of the physical struggles I was having that was causing me to feel, have blood sugar crashes and then to feel a great amount of craving for food, but some of it was emotional. And so if we don't get to those soul strongholds in our life, those things, and what I think of a stronghold is a lie that we believed that we're functioning from. It's a place where the enemy has a way to get in and steer us from a place that's a lie. It's a faulty foundation. So I want to encourage any of you that say, that kind of resonates, like there's some emotional issues, especially as you start making changes in your diet. If you find a very strong emotional reaction to, let's say, removing a food, and you say, boy, that seems kind of, why am I so upset or angry or sad? There's probably a soul reason behind that, and so I would encourage you to watch some of those videos. And then the last one, the last paradigm shift is that there's 3 major pathways that lead to wellness. This is what's coming at us. Picture yourself on a highway. What's going into us, which is our foundation of nutrition, and then what's coming out of us, which is the emissions of the car. You can tell a lot by what comes out of a car as to what's going on inside of the car. And our last class in March, we're going to focus on that one, and we're going to really look at some of those things. One big thing we said, and we just jumped right into let's get TMI, is are you pooping every day? This is really important. We just had a reminder of a friend that actually passed away from colon cancer and had gone weeks without having a bowel movement. This is a very bad thing. If you're not regularly passing what you're putting in, that's so important. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna get into that more some detox methods, some things to deal with the toxins in our environment, but I really want to throw that out there because there's some simple things you can do right away. One is vitamin C. Lots of vitamin C you can use to induce a bowel movement. Coffee can help. What was I going to say? Well, forgot. Water is very, very important. It'll come back to me. There's a third thing I wanted to say with that. But anyway, we will be really talking about that in the last class. So, do not keep eating if you're not having bowel movements. That's a really important thing. If stuff's not coming out, don't keep ingesting food. Just picture what's going on inside, and you're cramming that in there. So we'll leave it at that. But it's one of those things like where we stop and go, wow, that makes a lot of practical sense. You know, if my body's not eliminating, then I want to stop the other pathway, what's coming in. And it may be what's coming at us, some toxins or stress, things in our life that are keeping us from that. So does anybody have any questions from last class, either of those 5, other than the second one, which we're going to really get into tonight? Anything that's been pressing on you? I'm sure there's questions, but anything that you're like, I've really wanted to ask this. We're going to have lots of time at the end for questions too, but I thought before we get jumping in, if there's anything that's just pressing on anybody, we're good? Okay. We ended last class with a challenge to eliminate wheat, possibly grain, and if you were already on an either low carb or low grain diet, to go sugar free. Now I know not everybody did this, and if you want to say, hey, did you try it a little bit? Anybody give it a shot? Kind of go a little bit? How did it go? Did you see any changes, any testimonies, any things in your what list? Did anything change?
Well, I backed off a lot of the bread.
Okay.
You know, biscuits, gravy, you know, the staples of mankind. Which I did intake some bread, but it was very, very little.
Yeah.
I've been doing oatmeal and grits.
Mm-hmm.
I like grits.
Okay. So it's making some substitutions.
Right. But
So-
as far as like eating a sandwich,
Mm-hmm.
I don't do bread on a sandwich. I take like mesquite turkey breast
Uh-huh.
and a slice of Kraft cheese
Mm-hmm.
and just roll it up and eat it.
Ooh,
Maybe
good.
dip it in some mustard.
Yeah.
You know, because mustard's like a zero. You know,
Right.
it's really good for you. You know what I'm saying? It's really good for you.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that, and I'm down to about 18 pounds
Wow.
since actually I'm over just about 21 since the first Monday of this year.
That is awesome.
So
That is definitely heading in the
doing
right
that,
direction.
and I'm just doing that and backed off on my calorie intake.
Uh-huh. And how do you feel? You feel any better?
Yeah, I can really tell the difference.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can see the difference in my pants too. You know,
It's encouraging. I would say success breeds success. Hello. And so when you start to see some positive things, because sometimes there's the difficulties too, like we were saying, the discouragements that come along. So when you can notice the positive things, like when you go to put on a pair of pants and they fit more comfortably, that's helpful, really, really helpful to say keep going, because there are going to be those ups and downs. Our body can heal itself if we give it the right tools. But sometimes we've had certain areas that have been suffering for a while. And so those areas may take a little bit of time. And as one area gets well and the body can devote some energy to another area, we start to see some shifts and changes. And it doesn't always like line up linearly. I say A plus B doesn't always equal C. A plus B might be C for me one day and D another day. And for you, it might be something different. So really cool. Anyone else have any little testimonies or things they're feeling, changing? And it's only been about 4 weeks, and I know everybody's, you've been doing this from the beginning of the year, making some really good changes. Yeah. I know personally, I notice a big difference in my gut, in the feeling of like bloating, and when I'm really good about keeping out any processed foods and grains, that's where I feel it first. It's kind of my weak link in my chain. Yeah. Cool. I wanted to share a couple things because when we got to the end, we had so much information last time throughout that challenge, like, okay, go wheat free. But I want to throw out 3 things for you that may be an encouragement to keep that part out of your diet. One might be, people often say, well, whole grains are healthy, right? We have the Heart Association saying eat more whole grains, and the box of Cheerios says good for your heart healthy, you know, all these things. Where did this come from? And the best example that I heard in a book that I was reading is a study that was done on cigarettes, okay? So when cigarettes were, well, I don't remember when the study was done, but basically they did a test on the low tar cigarettes and showed that people that smoked low tar cigarettes had less adverse effects than those that smoked regular cigarettes, okay? So we might say, well, if these people smoked low tar cigarettes that were cigarette smokers, and let's say their risk of heart disease dropped, could we then say that low tar cigarettes cause your risk of heart disease to go down, and you should smoke lots and lots of low tar cigarettes because they drop your risk of heart attack? That is kind of what happened in the food industry with whole grains, because when we replace white, pasty flours that are completely devoid of nutrients and fiber and oils and germ, and we started putting in whole grains, we did see some change in people's risk factors for certain diseases. Then the correlation was, whole grains are good for you. We need lots and lots of low-tar cigarettes. Lots and lots of whole grains. Can you see where and we still have this resistance because we've been trained whole grains are so good for us. I do believe that at one point whole grains were good for us and still might have a place in our society, in our individual diets. But here's the other point, is the whole grains we have today are not grandma and great-grandma's whole grains. They are genetically modified. They are not the same. The chromosomes are different. They're metabolized differently. They're digested differently. It goes into our body in a different way. It affects our brain in a very addictive way. It binds to the same receptors in our brain that opioids bind to. And causes, instead of causing us to feel euphoric, it activates a great hunger mechanism. And it makes you want to feel like you want to eat all the time. And if you've ever thought of, like, if you eat a piece of bread and you just think, I could keep popping toast in the toaster, like, why don't I get full? I just could eat bread, but I could get full on, if I had a hamburger, I wouldn't eat 10 hamburgers, but I could eat 10 pieces of bread. There's just something in your brain, even if your stomach feels full, that wants more. So that is what's happening in the brain. And then the real focus is on blood sugar. And let me give you this example. If you walked in here today to class and in front of everybody's table there was a Snickers bar, would you be surprised if I had put that out? Would you think I was testing you or something? So you're probably like, she wants to see who's going to eat the Snickers bar and who's going to leave it. If I had a piece of whole grain bread in front of you and you came to a health class, you might feel differently. You might think, oh, this is a health class I'm at. Well, did you know if you pull up a glycemic index, which is how food affects the rate that your blood sugar goes up, whole wheat, not white, whole wheat bread raises your blood sugar, has a higher glycemic index than that same size serving of a Snickers bar. So now that doesn't necessarily mean that the calories are equal. There's other things in there that you wouldn't want to eat, and I'm definitely not saying, like low-tar cigarettes, oh good, we should eat lots and lots of Snickers bars. Not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying, shucks, right? Is that whole wheat bread actually raises your blood sugar more, has more of a glycemic effect, a load, than the Snickers bar does. So that's one of those reasons, if you were thinking, why are we vilifying wheat? Because as we learned, and we're going to go into the metabolic flexibility in our fuel systems, it's all about blood sugar. It's all about balancing out the blood sugar and getting that excess fuel off the body. So if we say a food with a high glycemic index is like adding fuel to the fire, and we want to put the fire down, and we keep shooting in little bits of grains and breads, we're constantly bringing up this vehicle that's on fire driving down the road, okay? So hopefully those things, and Dr. Osborne, glutenfreesociety.org, I really recommend him. If you're saying, I want to learn more, I am not an expert on wheat, he is, and actually has a book called No Grain, No Pain, talking about how to eliminate pain from your body, arthritis, all kinds of things by eliminating grains, and I've studied a few other people too. So suffice it to say, it's really a good experiment, if nothing else, to give yourself some time away from grains, and particularly wheat affects you, and glutinous grains affect you more than like rice would. So, But I wanted to give you some of that information so I didn't just leave you last week saying, hey, try this, and you think, why? Because why? I like to get to the why behind the what. Rather than just be told what to do, say why. All right, anybody have any questions on that before we jump into the metabolic flexibility? All right, cool. I love this so much because when I really started to walk in wellness, and when I shared last week about there was a time in my life when I answered that question and said I really want to be well. This is what shifted. I didn't even know what was happening in my body at the time, but I knew that I had a candida overgrowth, which is an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut, basically. So I did a candida diet. That's something you can look up to. The basics is starve off all the bad bugs in there, and so it's completely sugar-free, anything that would convert into sugar. And I started seeing all these amazing things happen in my body, things that I did not relate, some whats that I thought, well, that's not related to this, started to get better. And it wasn't until many years later that I really started to understand why this happens. So I'll give the picture again. We have two fuel systems, and that's how we were created. And I'll give you a couple scriptures because that's important to me. I believe we were created this way. One of the things you'll see if you do some studies on people that follow a ketogenic diet or talk a lot about metabolic flexibility, there's a whole bunch of people that will say, well, millions and millions of years ago, we ate this way. I personally do not believe that. I do not think it's true. I believe that we are not that old, and I believe we were actually created with a lot of intelligence by a loving God who designed our bodies with two different systems to function. And I think that's important because it shows his love for us. And because he originally created us, if you read Genesis, it says we were created in his image, Genesis 1:26. And then verses 29 through 31 say about all the herbs and plants that were to be our food. So we were originally created to live a plant-based diet, which is right now a big buzzword, and I'll just throw out there that be careful, because when truth comes out anywhere, marketing and big money companies get a hold of truth and they market truth. And all of a sudden you've got plant-based products at fast food restaurants and on every shelf. And just because something says it's plant-based doesn't mean that it's full of whole vegetables and fruits and things that are good for you. So really pay attention to those buzzwords when they start popping up in the marketing. But we were originally created to eat plants. We didn't eat meat. And I do believe that there were a whole lot of other species of plants, and that after the flood, which is in Genesis 9:3 and 4, is when Scripture says that there was this ban lifted on meat. We were to eat meat from that point on. I believe the flood destroyed a lot of the vegetation that we had. It would make sense that it would take some time for it to come back. But God, in his loving kindness, knowing the situation that we would be in, created our bodies to be able to handle meat and fat and to switch into a different type of fuel burning, which is using ketone bodies for fuel. That's a fat burning. So most people in this society, in particular in America, were sugar burners because sugar is in everything. It's like gasoline on a fire. If you put a little bit of gas, it's going to go, okay? It's not going to think, do I want to use that or not, okay? So when we switch over to ketones, we're moving completely away from the fire. It's like a car that has an electrical system. It's not just a different kind of gasoline for the fire. It's a totally different system. And what it does for the body is it rests the other system. And we pictured saying, okay, we all put gas in our vehicles. Everybody drive here? Everybody had gas. Where was the gas? In the tank. If the gas is in the back seat, in the tires, on the hood, in the engine, we're in really big trouble. And that's the picture, kind of a good picture of what diabetes is, type 2 diabetes in particular. When we have a sugar overload, we have gas everywhere, and we're extremely flammable. One of the best ways to heal a body or a society that runs on sugar is to purposely push us over into burning ketones. What I believe we were designed to, and this is what we're getting back to, is being able to transfer very easily back and forth between burning sugar and burning fat for fuel. But because we're stuck on sugar, when we don't eat all day, how many of you have heard graze, eat small meals, eat lots of small meals throughout the day? That's one of the things that has been taught us. Well, that works if you're a glucose burner and you're very careful not to overfill the tank. So it would be like if you're driving your car and you watch your your gas tank go down and you stop every 10 miles and you put a little bit more in, and you always make sure never to go over. That's the key to running a glucose system, is you cannot overfill the tank. If you overfill the tank, you're in trouble every time. It can be difficult with our body. Pretty easy with a gas gauge because they pop off. But if you've been alive longer, you used to have to pay attention or the gas would come out. It didn't always have a shut-off valve. So if that's kind of the picture of a glucose system. If you're putting glucose in and you're not paying attention, if you're munching all day long, that gas is spilling over and spilling over into your vehicle. So yes, does it work? Yeah, but that's the only way it works is small amounts. But then the system never, ever rests because it's a system that relies on constantly keeping that tank full. Now you can run it almost to the bottom, but what happens, the idiot light comes on and you think, oh my gosh, gas station. If you're on a road trip, now if you're in town, no big deal, right? But if you're on a road trip in the middle of nowhere, been there driving from New Mexico to Colorado one time, and the light came on and I thought, dear God, I do not think there even is a gas station. You get panic. That's what happens in the system when we have a blood sugar crash, okay? So if you are a glucose burner and you've ever been to the place where you're hangry, you're so hungry, you're angry, and you feel like I could eat anything right now, that's when your blood sugar is getting dangerously low and your body is going into panic mode saying, oh my gosh, we need more fuel, we need more fuel. If we are metabolically flexible, when we begin to get low, our body can very easily switch over into burning fat. And you might feel hungry in your tummy, but you will not feel hangry in your brain and in your nervous system. You'll just think, gee, I really could use a meal, but you're fine. You feel this very stable feeling that goes along. That is what I believe we can get back to. So I want to draw a picture of what I call a thrive zone. And we're going to talk about this in terms of weight for a minute, because it's easier to understand. Okay, so this is my personal development, something I've kind of come up with. But it's what I've seen in my own life and in other people, is that I believe to live in about a 10-pound range is what I call a thrive zone. Our body wants to find a set point. And the middle of that 10-point range is that set point that your body wants to find. What often happens is we're somewhere way over here, and our body has found a set point that isn't our healthiest. And it seems like you just can't get away from that. You'll lose some weight, and then boom, your body wants to come right back up to that. Or you'll put on some weight, and you think you'll lose down to a certain amount to back around that set point, and you just stop losing. You think, what is going on? Our body tries to find this set point. What I have learned to do is to take however many, let's say you have 50 pounds you really need to lose to be in a healthy range. Take that in chunks of 10 pounds. So you have 5 transitional thrive zones, so to speak, until you reach this place down in here. And when we get to this place, there's some room for error, and there's some room for these warning lights to come on. And this is how we can live in a way that is not so scary, to not think, okay, I've lost all this weight, I just hope I didn't gain it back, because that was not very much fun. If you've ever been on a diet and lost a significant amount of weight, the biggest fear is I'm gonna gain it all back. It's just gonna come back, and all that work I did is gonna be down the drain. Well, if we have trained our body, let's say you lose 10 pounds, you move down to another transitional zone, and then you adjust your macronutrients, which I'll write in here. Your macronutrients are the things you need in large quantities. Protein. So I come before E in protein, or E before I?
That's correct.
That's correct. Protein, carbs, carbohydrate, and fat. Micronutrients are they're just as important, but they're what we need in small amounts. Vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Just gonna make a note. We're not gonna really talk much about these today. What we're really talking about is your macros. Okay, so in this model that we've been mostly given, we need lots and lots of carbs. Has anybody ever seen the food guide pyramid? This is grains, right? And up here, this is fats. So that would be carbs as your highest amount, fats as your lowest. and proteins are going to be somewhere in the middle. To get our body to use fat for fuel, we have to deplete the tank of stored carbohydrate, which is glycogen, and it's stored in our liver and in our muscles. So we've got to empty out our tank to push ourselves into burning fat for fuel. The only way we can do that is by dropping our carbs down really low and basically pushing our body to where it has no other choice but to burn fat for fuel. So do you remember the riding example I gave last week, those of you that were here or watched the video? Okay, so I train horses, and we were saying, okay, if this is my balanced riding position, you can see how unbalanced I'm not going to fall off. This is my nutritional foundation. I want to have a nice solid foundation. That's when we're living in our Thrive Zone. That's all the things that we do on a regular basis, and we'll go into some of those details, but things like leafy greens, nuts and seeds, non-starchy vegetables, fruits, legumes, possibly whole ancient grains if we're able to get those and tolerate them, fermented foods, pure water, healthy fats, clean animal protein, clean dairy and eggs. All that stuff can fit into this range. And everybody has to figure out for themselves kind of what the best range or best percentages of your macronutrients are. So when we need to switch this over, we're going to adjust our macronutrients to get our body to be able to burn fat for fuel. And what we were saying in my riding example, if I have a student that rides consistently too far behind here, and I just say, well, adjust just a little bit, try to come up to where you should be, to perfect, inevitably they're going to end up somewhere in here. That's like when you're up here and you're just trying to make some subtle changes and you just can't seem to. You just kind of rock back and forth in it's not really a thrive zone, in an unthrive zone that's not healthy for you, and you just can't quite seem to really get a change going. So what we do is say, all right, I'm going to go with this rider and say, I'm going to teach you to ride way up here for a little bit, and then you're slowly going to find that perfect because you're going to pass it. That's the concept that we're going to use, and that's where this ketogenic diet, people heard of ketogenic diet, it's very popular, it's a buzzword right now too, and they say, okay, should I be eating high fat? Should I be eating high carbs? Yes, okay? It depends on where you're at. It's a tool to get you to perfect. How were we created to live? Each of us was created to live with a little bit different balance. We were created to live with variety. Seasonal things, when you're in the middle of summer, fruits are plentiful. And have you ever noticed you're just not quite as hungry? In the summer, you're busy and to grab an apple or something and keep going. But when you're stuck at home and it's really cold, what do you want? You want a big mug of hot tea and coffee and soup and some bread with lots of butter on it. You crave these like fattier, heavier foods when it's cold. And if you think about living in an agricultural society where you can't just go to Walmart any time of year and buy whatever you want, that might not be grown seasonally, but might be, as like Joel used to work in an orange grove back in Florida when he was younger and watch the oranges go through a little conveyor belt and be sprayed so they would go in green and they would come out orange on the other side. This was not a natural process to keep the production going. It's one of the things with wheat. Wheat used to be a once a year crop and it would grow very high. Well, now it grows only about 12 inches, and you can get 2 to 3 yields a year. Well, that's great, right? Except it's not the same food, and your body doesn't process it the same, and you're consuming it year-round in everything you can think of. Anytime you buy a packaged food, if you start reading through some of the ingredients, you're going to find there's a lot of hidden words for glutens and for grains, because you might think, well, I really don't eat a lot of grain, I don't eat a lot of sugar. Well, if you eat processed foods, you do. And that is just hidden and it's in there. If you eat whole foods, you have a garden and you're eating your own fruits and vegetables and you are possibly growing your own wheat and making your own bread and you had a cow you milked and you butchered that, a different cow, because you got to keep the one with the milk, and chickens, all these different things. You're out there working and you can't just go, okay, I'm just going to go quickly kill a chicken and cook it really fast. There's some process that happens to give you that time, and you're going to have times when you eat more and you eat less. So all of that to say, this used to be easier. It used to happen with ease, and we live in a really modern society where now we have to make choices. Choices aren't put on us as much as they were when we were an agricultural society. We can eat whatever we want, whenever we want, pretty much. What are we limited by? Money is really it, and choice. And that comes back to our soul. Our soul is our mind, our will, and our emotions. Our will is a tough one. And it's kind of one of the last things to die. Joel draws, and he has a picture now of the will. And he said, he realized, when we die, we still want our will to be done. It's the last thing you're supposed to leave, but it's kind of this oxymoron, like, I'm dead and I still want what I want to happen after I die. So that's where we're at in life, is we have a choice to make. If we're here, I'm hoping that you have at least part of you that says, I want to be well. And that's the class name is You Can Be Well for that very reason. And I asked you that question in the first class is, do you want to be well? And Jesus asked that question of people before he healed them. Do you want to be well? And you might think, well, of course I want to be well. Well, maybe this is a better question. Do you want to be a well person? Because we all want the end result. If we could snap our fingers, if I said, okay, everybody that comes in this store and goes out that door, you're going to walk out in perfect health if you go out that door. We would all be heading out that door. But it's just not quite that easy. There's a path that we have to walk. So the real question is, do we want to be a well person? And that means making daily choices. My vet was at the farm today, and she was asking me some health questions, and she was saying, oh boy, I really like Costa, and if you're watching this video, Suzanne, hi, she's going to watch it at some point. And when I left, I thought she had recommended this one horse have shoes on his, because his feet are real low to the ground and he gets really sore. And I thought, well, this would be a great question that we have to ask ourselves. If she said, hey, I really recommend you put shoes on him, and I said, oh, I just don't like shoes. She might say, well, that's fine, but you're probably going to see me out here again with he's going to get another abscess in his foot. So if you don't want him to have an abscess, you should probably put shoes on him. And maybe that's the better way to say it. Because maybe I really don't like shoes. Maybe I would prefer my horses not wear shoes. This horse needs shoes. So that's, again, coming back to this individual thrive zone. And all of us want someone to say, just tell me what to eat. Just give me a meal plan. Tell me how much of this. Tell me what time of day. And you can do that temporarily, just like my riding lesson, right? If that student comes to me, I'm going to say, okay, today we're going to spend 20 minutes and you're going to stay in 2 point. And then it's up to that person. Are they going to do the work, and are they going to actually change and grow until they find that part of where their body fits? Because everybody's a different shape and size, so they've got to find that. Same thing with us. So these would be maybe what we would call a fad diet. So maybe here's the Heart Association, American Dietary Association, the Diabetic Association still recommends the very high grain diet, whole grain. And if you want to research that, it's pretty fascinating where a lot of that came in and where we vilified cholesterol as well. There was a doctor named Ansel Keys. You can Google that if you're the type of person that wants to know. It's verges on conspiracy theory pretty darn strong, but it's not a pretty picture of what some of the things that have come down the pike in our society, and whether it's based on power or money or what it is, but it's not founded in really solid scientific health. So look up some of these things. On this end too would be a ketogenic diet. There are times people that have Alzheimer's actually do really well living on a ketogenic diet because their brain can use those ketones better. And again, we won't have time to go into the details of that, but something you can look into. There are some people that do better living on a much more restricted diet. But think about, if you really restrict some of these things, the vitamins and minerals, unless you're taking supplements, these are the things that you find in your foods. So if you really restrict what you eat in your macronutrients, you're going to really restrict your micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals. And Dr. Joel Wallach is a really awesome doctor to listen to, and he talks about minerals and how he was a vet before he became a people doctor. I said that the other day, and I said before he became a people vet. But that's just my animal brain thinking. Before he became a human doctor, he was a vet. And he saw that how they treated all the animals with issues was by changing their minerals. And he said, why aren't we doing this with people? We noticed an issue with this cow, and so, he's got a magnesium deficiency. But with people, we were putting them on drugs. Well, The money was in the prescription drugs and not so much in supplementing with magnesium or whatever they were missing. So that's the important part of having this variety in our diet too, and a variety in amounts. So some days, are you more hungry than others? Okay, now sometimes that can be a chemical thing that's acting on the brain, like we said before with wheat. But sometimes you're more active on different days, and if we're eating by a very, very strict plan, the other thing we end up doing is we lose that ability to listen to our bodies. And we were created with this mechanism that has hunger and satiety and tells you kind of what you're hungry for sometimes. But when we have not listened to that for a long time, it becomes a system we can't really trust anymore. Because you might, if you eat very addictive foods, like let's say the Snickers bars were out, you might get hungry an hour from now and think, I want a Snickers, right? Isn't that commercial you're not the same when you haven't had your Snickers bar. You're going to start craving those things that aren't necessarily good for you. So you might say, well, aren't I supposed to trust my hunger mechanism, and this is what I'm craving right now? Well, you can see that difficulty in that, right? But when we come back to health, when we make that decision we want to be a well person, and we begin making the choices with our will, putting shoes on that horse because he needs shoes, we start to see the horse get healthier and his feet get better. And next thing I know, I'm not so bothered by having to put shoes on the horse because I really enjoy having a horse that I can ride and not have to call the vet out all the time for. Making the correlation, we start to see those pieces come together, and we really do start to bring health to our bodies. All right, let me gather myself here because I can get talking. I want to make sure I hit some of these key points. Okay, so remembering that these tools of changing your macronutrients are temporary to help you hopefully get to this individual thrive zone. And so what we're specifically talking about is getting into ketosis. Has anybody done a ketogenic diet and had any success with that? Yeah? Okay. Do you know what your percentages were that you were eating or close to?
I had to knock it down almost less than half.
Mm-hmm.
My body weight was 10 times over what it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I lost 58 pounds, but I've gained 25 back.
Okay. And
I hit a point where if I didn't do the intermittent fasting, I just gained.
Uh-huh.
So.
Good. Anyone heard that term, intermittent fasting? We know what it is. Basically, it's the time where we're not eating, okay? And intermittent fasting is stretching, and we all fast every day. You know, if the word fast scares you, we all fast while you're sleeping, unless you get up in the middle of the night and you're munching on things.
Sleep
eating. You are fasting, thus the term break fast is why we eat our first meal of the day. So intermittent fasting is just stretching out that window of time where we don't eat and shortening our window of eating. And it can be a really good way to help you get into ketosis and to begin to use fat for fuel. So you found that you got to a place where, unless you were using intermittent fasting, the weight just came right back on.
Right.
Okay. How long had you been on a ketogenic diet?
6 months.
Okay. So she wrote in 2 point a really long time. That 6 months is pretty long. So what I recommend is push yourself into ketosis if you want to lose weight or if you need to have some health changes in your life, and then ease yourself back in and find that balance. So in ketosis, we're going to be putting our fat up to pretty close to about 70% of our calories, okay? Carbs are going to be only about 5% and protein about 25%. Sometimes people can do a little bit more. You've got to play with this, but the goal here is healthy fat, okay? I've seen a lot of things on like Pinterest, and people are doing a ketogenic diet, and they've got like a plate of bacon, and they're like, this is my breakfast, and it's like a heaping mound, and we think, oh boy, I just don't think this can be healthy for you. Will it work? Short term. It will, because it's a fat, and it switches you into, it's your electrical system, burning fat for fuel, and you'll burn fat for fuel, but you'll start depleting certain vitamins and minerals will get out of whack, and systems won't function as well, and so then when you go back to eating a more normal diet, a more balanced ratio, your body might not just be about fuel at that point, but certain systems that aren't functioning because they're not getting the electrolytes that they need, coenzymes, all these different things that are a little bit harder to measure than right here. So that's something we want to do temporarily and bring it back down. Finding what really works in here for you is the key. This is where you want to find out what are the best percentages for me. So I have found I do really well on a pretty low carbohydrate diet, but it's not a 5%, and I don't have to measure it anymore. So this is where we want to get to be able to listen to our bodies and be able to feel that out a little bit, so you're not weighing things and chopping things up and putting them in measuring cups and all of that sort of a thing. Can that be helpful? As a tool to get you going, it can be. And there are some things, there's an app, Carb Manager is one I've used. Anyone else use any apps on their phone? There's certain like keto ones that will show you can put your food in, and it will tell you, it'll give you a little pie chart, and it'll say, you ate this much fat, you know, this much fat, this much carb, and the rest of it in protein, and you can know where you need to be. Those things can be really, really helpful. So can, you can buy little strips at Walmart, Keto Strips, and you just pee on them, and it'll show you where your ketones are. Those work really well in the beginning of getting you into ketosis, because basically when your body starts burning ketone bodies for fuel, you start producing them, and you're going to pee some of them out because your body's going to overproduce them in the beginning. It's going to show you that you're getting into ketosis. As your body becomes what we call fat adapted, to where you're very easily able to use ketone bodies for fuel, you're not going to necessarily overproduce ketones anymore. So you might use those strips and say, gosh, I'm not in ketosis anymore, but I feel like I am. They're not that accurate. There's other things. You can get a breath meter. You can do a blood test. Those are a little bit more invasive to be able to check. This is something I think helps me to think about. All calories are not the same, okay? Sometimes calories in, we hear that calories in, calories out. Just burn more calories than you eat and you'll lose weight. Well, that's if we say eating is simply math, okay? But I say eating is math and science because it's a chemical reaction. I can take the same calories of oil and dump it on a fire, and the same calories of, let's say, of water, might be a huge quantity of water to equal that, and dump it on the fire, and I'm going to have two very different reactions to the fire, right? One's going to put it out, the other one's going to spark it right back up. So that's a chemical reaction. It's not just about what the calories are. So that's an important part of learning this whole process, is not just saying, well, and we all have seen this, if I said put the same amount of calories on this table of Cheetos and chocolate donuts, and the same amount of calories over here of whole vegetables and fruits and nuts, and said, who's going to be healthier? They're the same calories. Every single one of us would know exactly. You're going to be healthier eating the healthy food. So right there you can say, oh, okay, even if I've thought all calories are the same, you really don't think that. You really do know that this type of food is going to affect you very differently than these other types of food. Okay, let me let you guys jump in here because I want to hear, the questions always help me get going in the right direction. What, if you wanted to say, okay, I want to get into ketosis, throw out some questions on, do you have any questions on where you're at with that? Where would you, with your understanding of what we're talking about now, does that make sense? Help me to answer the questions, because I can go in a few different directions at this point.
Help me to understand what healthy fats is.
Very good. So healthy fats, which we were kind of going there a second ago with the types of foods, those are going to be things like extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, nuts and seeds. Unhealthy fats are going to be things like your canola oils and oils these oils are chemically extracted, and they're called vegetable oils, but they're really not taken from vegetables. Actually, canola oil is taken from a grape seed, and it can be rancid very easily. It's not a stable oil. So some of these oils, again, that we were told, margarine, we were told for a while was healthier than butter, right? Margarine's actually like 1 or 2 chemical reactions away from plastic. It is not really a recognizable food that's easy to digest. So a grass-fed butter would be much better than eating margarine. So these trans fatty acids, saturated fats are not bad for you. Let me put that in there, because a lot of times we've heard don't eat any kind of saturated fats. Saturated fats would be like things that are hard at room temperature. So If you're eating grass-fed, clean saturated fats and things like butter, and coconut oil is a saturated fat. These are good for you. These are really healthy. And there's so much, again, bad information out there about cholesterol. Cholesterol is not a bad thing. If you don't have cholesterol, your cells fall apart. You don't have hormones in your body. You absolutely must have cholesterol. You just want to have good balances of different types of cholesterol, and you want to have whole food resources in your body, not getting these things from chemically processed fats. So if you're eating animal fats, you want, personally, I believe in eating the clean meats that are listed biblically. The science is behind that. Pork is a scavenger. Pigs are scavengers, and they store a lot of toxins in their flesh and in their fat, as do shellfish. If you have a body of water with shellfish and clean fish, and you put a toxin in, those shellfish will absorb it and die, and the clean fish will live. If you don't have those shellfish in there, then the clean fish will die with the toxins. So if you can eat these cleaner meats, and the fish oils, salmon, cold water fish is an excellent source of fat. But those are going to be your sources of fat. Nuts, seeds, avocados, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil is a wonderful fat. And here's one that can really help you to push your body into ketosis quickly is MCT oil. Now this is something you buy, but it is made from coconut oil. And it's the medium chain triglycerides is what MCT stands for. And C8 is like 8 carbons. That particular MCT oil or medium chain triglyceride can go almost straight into your body as fuel. So it doesn't have to be processed by the liver. That can really help you, and I recommend using that in the mornings in your coffee. So when you wake up in the morning, you haven't eaten, okay? For, let's say, at least 8 hours, most of us. And what we want to do is have a minimum of about 12-hour window to get ourselves into ketosis. And you can push that even longer for intermittent fasting. Some people will go up to 18 hours without eating before they will eat, and maybe even only eat one meal a day. But when you wake up in the morning, your liver and your muscles are at their lowest storage point of glycogen. Glycogen is the storage form of sugar. So when you eat any kinds of sugar is what everything is broken down to be used if you're in the glucose model. Even if you're eating protein is broken down into sugar for fuel. Excess sugar is what is stored as fat in your body. We tend to think, eat fat, get fat. It doesn't work that way. Excess sugar in your bloodstream is either taken up by your muscles or your liver, and once that's full, it has to be stored, and it's packed in these nice little squishy boxes called fat cells and packed all over our body. And that is where fat comes from. It's an excess of glucose. Just eating fat has to be either stored or broken down into ketone bodies to be used as fuel. So in that sense, you've got the math equation of calories. If you're eating tons and tons of fat and a lot of sugar, so that you're a glucose burner, you're only in one system, are you going to gain weight? Absolutely, because you are a sugar burner and you're going to have excess calories that have to be stored somewhere. But if you're eating a high-fat diet but low in sugar, so you're burning the fat for fuel, you can eat quite a bit of fat because it doesn't just get stored as fat. It goes into creating these hormones and cell membranes and myelin sheath on the end of your nerves and feeds your brain. Fat does wonderful things in your body. But if we are just consuming tons of calories and staying as sugar burners, that's where we get this misconception that fat, I eat fat and I become fat. It's excess glucose that is stored as fat. That's where fat comes from. That makes sense? Wouldn't it be nice to burn that fat that we have stored on us somewhere? We want to use that for fuel. Your body will never, picture your attic is full of little boxes of stored stuff. As long as your kitchen's full of food, you're not going to go to the attic and get the stuff that's up there. But if the kitchen's empty, you're going to say, I got to find some more food. I got to go up there where my stores are. So that's what we've got. If we have food in the kitchen, you're never going to unpack the boxes in the attic. And we have to get down to nothing. So we fast. We wake up in the morning. Our glycogen stores are the lowest. This is when we can add like that MCT oil to coffee in the morning or tea, or you can even just take a little spoonful of it. And what you're going to do is suggest to your body, hey, wouldn't this be a good source of fuel? Have you wanted to try using ketones? Once your body becomes you've heard this term fat adapted or keto adapted, means your body has learned again how to use fat for fuel, then you can begin to have this ease of transferring back and forth. But in the beginning, if you eat sugar, if you wake up in the morning, we've heard breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, not necessarily. I think it's the most important meal because what you choose to do at breakfast is the most important thing. If you wake up and you immediately give yourself a high sugar breakfast, you're going to tell your body, we're going to be burning sugar today. And that's what your body's going to burn, that sugar that you eat right away. And then it's going to say, oh my gosh, my blood sugar's really low. And instead of being able to shift over and burn fat for fuel, it's going to send a message to your brain. You're going to get the shakies and the hangries about 2 hours after breakfast, and you're going to say, I have to have something, it's not lunchtime yet, and you're going to need a snack to carry you over to lunch, and then a snack to carry you over to dinner. So the concept behind this is we're saying we want our body to wake up and we want to immediately suggest to it, why don't you use fat for fuel today? And begin to give your body, so breakfast is the best place if you're switching into using ketones for fuel to have a high fat breakfast. Eggs are a wonderful source of fat. You're asking about sources of fat. You can get pasture raised eggs that chickens aren't given all kinds of antibiotics and hormones and chemically laden food. Eggs can be a wonderful, wonderful source of fat and vitamins and minerals and all kinds of things. So that's a great way to start your day. And then wait and see. What I have found being keto adapted, and I live in this area now, and I thank God because I didn't used to. I used to always feel this fear that I'm going to lose control of my body or I'm not going to be well. And when I start to notice that I'm edging towards the top, like we were saying when I originally wrote this down, thinking about weight, if I start to notice, oh, I'm heading up towards this way, the direction that I'm going is heading away from my best set point, I can say, that's like my little warning light on my dashboard going off. I say, what am I doing? Oh yeah, we have been to a few parties and I did have that ice cream the other night, and certain things that I want to have some room. I want to have a little bit of enjoyment. And I say that with a smile because our sense of enjoyment changes as we begin to get healthy. And let's say like ice cream. I say, oh, I love ice cream. Well, as I begin to get healthy and I say, I want to keep that in my diet at times, I can start to find sources of cleaner ice cream. I might say, oh, Haagen-Dazs ice cream has less ingredients and less toxins in it than maybe the store brand, the Kroger brand. But then I might find that there's a farmer down the road that makes their own ice cream, and that might even be better. Or I might learn how to make it from the milk that I buy from this woman who lives down the road. So you slowly, that's about being in the direction of perfection. If you're used to eating bowls and bowls of ice cream every night, for you to make a shift, Greg was sharing some of the shifts that he's made. And he said, I gave this up and I started eating this. So important. And then maybe 6 months from now, he might say, you know what? That thing that I had given up bread for, I've now found a better source of this. And we start to see those changes. But we don't go from here to here immediately. We start making some steps in this direction. So when we start to have these warning lights go on, we can shift. So for me, if I'm looking at a weight, if I say, okay, I'm starting to creep up there, we've had some parties, holidays, family in town, I've been a little bit lax and eating things I don't normally eat, I start seeing that warning light, I shift my macros, and my body naturally just is able to come back to where it's comfortable. Does that make sense? I know I'm a little bit all over the place tonight.
Got a question.
Yes.
You said eggs in the morning?
Yeah.
Is there a vegetable a person can eat to substitute instead of eggs?
You
Is it the
certainly.
same thing?
Well, you can. One of the things I like about eggs is because they're high in fat in the morning and they a lot of vitamins and minerals in them. So you might say if you don't eat eggs and you want to start your morning out with a good high fat, good quality high fat, you could even do a salad with avocado and nuts on it and some extra virgin olive oil. We might think salad for breakfast. Yeah, you can eat salad whenever you want. Or one of the things I love to do is my leftover vegetables from the dinner the night before is saute those in maybe a little bit of coconut oil to warm them up. Now I might put an egg in there. There's something you can do like scramble an egg in there. If you don't eat egg, put some avocado or throw a couple almonds in there and saute them in together and have those as leftovers. Yeah. And you're probably going to find you're not hungry for a long time. Maybe not right away. So if you find that as you're beginning to become fat adapted, you start to have that little bit of hunger in the middle, a little bit of hangry, just give yourself a little bit of a healthier carb. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to eat a Snickers bar, maybe you have a carrot and you give yourself a little bit of that to make it through, and you slowly ease yourself into being able to use fat for fuel. But I really recommend that breakfast be the meal where you try to keep as low carbs as possible, because you're already more than halfway there. When you wake up, you've been fasting for several hours, quite a long time. And if you can, let's say you stop eating at 7 o'clock the night before, and you don't eat anything till at least 7 o'clock the next morning, you've just gone 12 hours of fasting. That's really good. And then maybe you can stretch that to 8 or 9. Now you've come to 13, 14 hours, and you've given your body a chance to clean up all that excess fuel. Remember the picture of the car full of fuel everywhere? You're giving your body a chance to come in and clean some of that fuel out. And then instead of just waking up and dumping more in the back seat because your tank's still full, you're saying, oh, I'm already in a really good place. I'm going to start out with a really good, high quality, high fat, healthy fat breakfast. And vegetables are number one. If you can put vegetables in every single meal, you will be doing really well. Add it to your, if you like eggs in the morning, saute up some spinach. That's one of my favorite things, is I just saute some spinach in the morning and I put a fried egg on top of there. And we eat kimchi. Anyone familiar with kimchi? It's fermented food. It's a Japanese food, but it's a great way to get your probiotics. It's a little bit hard to find around here. There's only one brand that the stores carry in Rocky Mount, but a lot of other places you can make it very easily too if you get online and go on YouTube and look at that. That's a great way to get the good bacteria back into your gut without just purchasing a bottle of probiotics. Yeah, and then go as long as you can before you eat your next meal, and then keep that, try the same balance. Try eating another high fat, high vegetable meal, low in carbohydrate, and see how you feel, and begin to stretch that and give your body that chance. If in the evening, especially towards your evening meal, you think you start to feel that little bit of shakiness, low blood sugar kind of a feeling, that's a better time to add some healthy carbs, like sweet potato, like a quarter of a sweet potato at night. Your stores of glycogen, if you've been eating high fat, low carb all day, and you've been moving and doing things, your stores of glycogen are going to be pretty low by then. So then you're just giving it a little bit more, and then you're going to fast all night long. Another strategy is to wake up in the morning and go for a walk. Drink a big glass of water first thing in the morning to get everything moving, to hydrate. You haven't been drinking either when you've been fasting. You have been starving your body of water for that time too. Big glass of water in the morning, go for a little bit of a walk, and then wait and see. If you drink coffee, put that MCT oil in your coffee in the morning to see. MCT, it stands for medium chain triglycerides, and it's a coconut oil, but it's the specific part of the coconut oil that your body can transfer right into ketone bodies. It's one of the easiest ways to help your body become keto adapted, is to use that MCT oil. And on that note, you can use that during the day. If you're really working on staying in ketosis and you feel like you're a little bit hungry in the day, you can take a tablespoon of that, or you can make, I make these little things. I'll take unsweetened coconut and unsweetened chocolate, put a little stevia, melt that with coconut oil, and mix it in my ice cube trays, stick it in the freezer, and I call them little fat bombs. And there's lots of different recipes you can look up, but that'll give you a little bit of an energy, because that's going to be your energy source, and it'll usually kind of clear your mind up too and gives you that energy to keep going. Remembering that the goal is not to stay in ketosis. The goal is to use ketosis if you're trying to lose weight. It's very, very effective at weight loss. If you're trying to heal things in your body because you haven't had that time for your body to be without food, if you're eating all the time, small meals all the time, your energy is going towards digesting that food. A lot of energy is digesting food, even if you're eating really healthy foods. Because if you're eating a lot of raw foods and whole vegetables and whole grains in that glucose burning model, that's a lot of work to break that food down. And so your it might be really good for some things, the fiber and all that is really good, but you're never giving your digestive system a rest, and you're not allowing that energy to go towards what we call autophagy or autophagy, some people pronounce it differently, which is the cleanup process of getting all the old dead cells out of our body, where our cells actually go and clean up and eat up the dead cells so our new cells can regenerate. I just heard, I think it was Dr. Jockers say that your intestinal lining actually can rebuild itself in 2 to 7 days. That's amazing. And especially if you're fasting. So that might scare people, think, fast for 7 days? Well, don't jump into a 7-day fast. But if you can teach your body to become keto adapted first, you might actually be able to fast. Fasting is a really healthful strategy. There are countless testimonies of people who have been cured from incurable diseases, cancers and things, from fasting, because they've given their body a chance to eat up these unhealthy cells. But because we're so stuck in a glucose model, if we fast, that's scary. We feel horrible, absolutely horrible, because our body says, oh my gosh, goes into that panic mode of where's the gas station. But if we, in our healthy times, work on training ourselves to very easily use fat for fuel and glucose for fuel, and we find that really good balance for ourselves in between where we want to live, we could do a healing fast. If you had something come up in your body, you would be much more able to do a fast because your body would know how to use fat for fuel, and you wouldn't feel this panicky, crashing kind of a feeling that you get when you are used to just burning glucose for fuel. Yeah? Okay. Think of some more questions while I look through here and see if I have kind of hit some of these things. Remember that the foundation is the most important. I tend to kind of think that protein is a bit of a foundation. When I look at shifting my macronutrients and when I work with people, some people have done really high protein diets. If you work out a lot, if you're a muscle bodybuilder, you're going to need a higher protein, and that range is still not going to be a huge change, okay? Protein's a pretty solid foundation. We're really talking about shifting these two macronutrients most of the time. If we find what works for us with protein, we're really just saying, hey, when I'm in a place where I need to lose some weight or I want to do more of a fast for healing, I'm going to up my fats and lower my carbs. And then when I'm coming back towards my Thrive Zone, I can change that and I can find that balance that works for me. So that nutritional foundation is the most important thing to have, and that gives you some flexibility. So you actually do have some room to make some choices sometimes. You can say, you might not choose this, but let's say you're at grandma's and she makes the best rhubarb pie ever, and you're like, I am eating the rhubarb pie. And you eat that rhubarb pie, you don't have to say, oh my gosh, I've just destroyed my whole diet, I might as well just eat all the cookies in the house and everything else. You can say, okay, I can enjoy that because I know how to bring myself back. It's when we continually make choices over and over. It's what you do on a consistent basis that matters the most. The issue being when we have really teetered on the edge and we're living, rather than in a really good Thrive Zone, we're living somewhere in this area, and then we do the things like eating grandma's rhubarb pie, we're constantly putting so much stress and adding to a system that's not thriving. We're not in a Thrive Zone. So that's why we want to find this Thrive Zone, not just weight. It's easiest to see in weight because you can say, okay, if this is my actual, whatever your weight was here, and I start gaining 3, 4, 5 pounds, I say, well, I need to shift something because obviously I'm starting to gain weight. If I started dropping way down here, I might say, goodness, this is not healthy. This is, people that have an eating disorder, there's no bottom. That's the tricky part. The losing the weight is just all good. This is not good. There is a weight that's not healthy. Women, we need fat on our bodies for our hormones. We have to carry more fat on our bodies than men do. So when we can see those little things for weight, it's easy to see how we can say, oh, I'm going to change that. But if it's a health thing, you might say, my gut feels bloated when I've been eating those things I don't normally eat. And I might be able to do a little bit more of a fast. I did this recently. We had a Super Bowl party with some family. And I didn't even think that I ate that terribly, but my body was did not like whatever it was I ate. And I didn't even feel like eating the next day. I woke up and it wasn't even a hard choice. I was just like, I don't even want to eat food. And I just did a water and broth fast. And I felt phenomenal. It just brought me right back down. That's a wonderful place to be in because you don't have to live in fear. and think if I make one mistake, I've just destroyed everything, all the work that I've done. Yeah. Any other questions? How, especially on the how.
You got one.
Lowering your carbs,
Mm-hmm.
like fruits. I mean, you hear fruit is good for you. I like fruit, pineapple, bananas, oranges, but aren't they high carbohydrate?
Yeah.
Especially
Fruit.
those three.
Yeah.
It seems like probably the highest.
That's what I've been
I
thinking
think we're
about.
like all those strawberries, and no, he went for like the highest of the highest ones, yeah.
So, I mean, do you cut that out completely? Fruits?
Well, it depends on what your reasons are. If you're in a place, let's say you're trying to lose some weight, you might say, okay, temporarily, I'm going to restrict all that excess sugar, and I'm going to bring, so that I can get myself into burning fat and bring my weight back down, and then I'm going to find what works for me. And again, seasonally, sometimes if you're outside and you're sweating and you're really active, you probably can tolerate a lot more fruit, and fruit is very healthy. Some of the problem comes in that we have eaten so much processed food for so long. Had we grown up eating vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and organic eggs and organic meat, we probably could eat a whole lot more fruit. But because we have a little bit damaged our systems, a lot of it damaged our systems with excess glucose, our body eats an apple and automatically shifts us right back over into this glucose model. And so I absolutely feel like fruit is healthy, and we need to. It's one of the reasons I believe in this system of being able to get ourselves back into a Thrive Zone is we need the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that are in fruit are so amazing. But also, you're not going to sit down, and you kind of can feel this naturally. Would you picture yourself sitting down and eating 5 apples? Most people wouldn't eat 5 apples. It just seems weird, you know? But we would get a big bag of popcorn and eat an entire bag of popcorn. So fruit kind of comes with its own limitations in it. You just don't really feel like you want as much of it. But now imagine, let's say you've gone into fat burning for a while and you maybe have given up fruit for a time. It's amazing, especially if you've given up all sugar. You eat that apple and it's like, this is awesome. It's so good. It tastes like candy. And that's with my girls when they were younger, I used to call it God candy, was fruit. And we were laughing the other day saying, you know, if you buy candy, it's strawberry flavored, cherry flavored. Why not eat a strawberry or a cherry? These things are actually what God made. So yes, we want to get our bodies to where we can enjoy those fruits because they're loaded with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and things we don't even know. You know, we think we know so much. We know a lot, and it's so small compared to what God has put in. Have any of you seen pictures of like fruits and vegetables that look like certain organs in the body? Isn't that fascinating? I just saw walnut the other day. It actually even has like the line straight down the middle like your brain. Walnuts are really good for your brain. I know God he could have made them look, animals even. I mean, he has such variety in this world. Why isn't there one kind of fruit? This is fruit, this is a vegetable. Because he wants us to have that variety, and it's just all of creation cries of his greatness. So yes, the goal being that we would be able to come back to that, and it's within moderation and finding for yourself. If you have lived a lifetime of doing a lot of damage to your body, like next class when we talk about what's coming at us, coming in us, and coming out of us. If you spend a lot of time, it's just like if somebody has lived in or worked in a plant where there's all kinds of fumes and they've been breathing those their whole life, they're going to be full of a lot more toxins than someone that lives on a farm in the middle of Kansas somewhere. So that may be something we have to live with. We don't always like consequences in our lives, and sometimes we have to come to that place where we say, darn it, you know, I made some choices in life that have put me in a place where I may have some other choices that I have to make in order to be the healthy person I want to be. But when we look at how quickly our cells actually do regenerate, I really believe we can get back to being totally healthy and being able to eat the vast variety of foods that God's given us to eat. Does that make sense? So for a time, and if you do it knowingly and say, I'm purposely not going to eat fruits for a while because I'm restricting those carbs, and then when you begin to lose some weight or feel healthful and you start to bring them back in, your body's going to tell you. You're going to know when you feel good and what's a good amount for you.
Is there a particular time frame to eat the fruit, like morning time, lunchtime,
Yeah.
supper time, or?
So I've heard really conflicting information on this. I remember years ago hearing, don't ever eat fruit at night because fruit digests really quickly, and if you eat it at night, it ferments in your stomach and can cause problems. Then I've heard, always eat your carbs, fruits, starch, your vegetables at night because your glycogen stores are the lowest, and that's when you want to refuel your tank. So both of those things, if you think about it, the reason why is different. So if you're doing it just for the macronutrients, the best time to eat your carbs is later in the day. But if this is true that fruit actually ferments in your stomach overnight, then you might say, well, this is not a really good thing. I have not. That was a long time ago that I heard that, and I don't know that is true. I would think 12 hours in your stomach. Most of us don't usually sleep longer than 12 hours, even if you had fruit. That seems like a very reasonable amount of time. Now, if you have a very high yeast overgrowth, candida in your gut, they're going to feed on any sugar they can get a hold of. So in that sense, you might have a lot of gas and bloating if you were to eat fruit at any time, but particularly at night when you're sleeping, it might be very uncomfortable because you can't just pass that through very quickly. So the reason behind it is going to be the key. If you're trying to, which what we're talking about tonight is getting into ketosis and becoming a fat burner, for that sake, you want to not eat any kind of fruits earlier in the day. You want to stay really high in fat and give yourself that opportunity to switch into fat burning. And if you're going to eat carbs, I know Dr. Jockers calls it carb loading. If you have a low thyroid, okay, if anyone has a low thyroid, sometimes that's one condition that can start to suffer a little bit being on ketosis for too long. And the best way to deal with that if you have low production of thyroid hormone or low thyroid function is to carb load, eat some carbs at night. It doesn't mean you have to have a giant bowl of pasta. If you've ever heard that with long distance racer bikers, I used to always hear that in Colorado, they would carb load at night and they would eat all these pasta. Well, they were trying to fill their glycogen stores so they could go as long as possible the day before. You still can only get to a certain amount. We're not talking about that. That's carb loading. That's trying to get your glycogen up as high as possible, the opposite of what we're trying to do for ketosis. But if you want to eat some fruits or some carbs, and especially you have a low thyroid to where you're going to need some of those sugars to help you convert your thyroid hormone, have them later in the day. Some sweet potato, more nuts and seeds. Blueberries, talking about fruits, your berries are your lower glycemic fruits. Raspberries, blueberries, blackberries are going to be lower in glycemic.
I heard kiwis too.
Kiwi? I just was looking that up because I love kiwis.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
They're technically a berry, so I guess they're more on that range.
That I did not know.
lower.
I know the glycemic index is around 50 somewhere with kiwis. So yes.
What are some good carbs and proteins we can intake?
Okay, so focus on vegetables. Vegetables are your best source of everything. Vitamins, minerals, everything you can possibly have. So nuts and seeds are a really good place. If you're really trying to push yourself into ketosis, they do have higher carbs. Like almonds are a perfect food in the sense that they're balanced in their macronutrients. So maybe 8 to 10 almonds and a cheese stick might be a great meal. If you're still eating 2-3 meals a day, that might be a great lunch just to give you some fat throughout the day. But if you ate a giant handful of almonds, you're probably going to push your carbs up a little bit too high.
Okay.
How many did you say?
Like 8 to 10.
That don't sound like much.
It doesn't sound like that. You need something else with that.
Yeah. Also slice up a cucumber.
Yeah,
Or a
cucumbers
pickle.
are great, but those kinds of food, cucumbers are wonderful. Celery, those things to put with it.
Cabbage.
Any vegetable. I've
been eating a lot of purple cabbage.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Red cabbage is raw.
And how does your digestion handle that? You do okay with it?
Yeah.
Good. Some
Well,
people might get a little gas.
Well, I eat prunes with it too.
Okay. That
So you
keeps
know
it
what I'm
going
saying?
along.
Because prunes are all good for you.
Yeah. Now there's another food that you might say there's a lot of really healthful things about prunes, but they're also going to be really high in sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to get into ketosis, a prune or two might push you right over the top. But do they help keep things moving? Absolutely. So those are those places where we're saying, okay, fine. And there's vitamins and minerals in them. So if you're moving in the direction of perfection, you might use prunes for a time, and then you might say, hey, I don't need those, or I can do some kimchi, which has the probiotics that help me to digest food, which it's basically fermented cabbage is what
Right.
kimchi is. So your question was healthy carbs and proteins, right? So in the proteins, you want to get grass-fed meat as much as possible. The shift in the fats is the omega-3s and the omega-6. We get lots of omega-6 fatty acids, but we don't get as much omega-3. And that's really important for all of those, the things we talked about as far as cholesterol and all those things. Grass-fed beef has a much better ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So chicken, again, and here's where I say don't compromise. There's certain things, like don't get chemically laden meats and cheeses and eggs and dairy. Spend your money there. Maybe get the cheaper cuts. One of the things that I'll do is get like chicken thighs, but make sure that they're organic, free-range chickens. Cook those in your crock pot and shred it up. You've got chicken you can put on salad. You can make chicken tacos, or if like I make flaxseed flatbread for myself. If you're eating any corn, and you can do actual taco shells, or get a roast. Get a if you look at grass-fed beef, and a grass-fed ribeye might be $15 a pound, but a grass-fed roast might be $5 or $6 a pound. Get a big old roast, again, throw it in the crock pot and shred it up, and that's a better way to go. Better to do that than to say, boy, I really want that ribeye, so I'm going to get the USDA one that's on sale right now, but it's loaded with growth hormones and antibiotics, because now you might be having good fat and good protein, but you've just dumped into the chemical reaction a whole bunch of toxins that your body and your brain are going to now have to deal with. So eggs, nuts, cheese, if you can find, there's some local farmers around here. We get some cheese and goat yogurt from a local farmer. I am not a fan of goat milk, just have never, some people like it, it's supposed to be better for you, but I love the goat yogurt. Don't ask me why, the goat yogurt tastes fine to me, but the goat milk, just not so good, and the goat cheese. But she makes it raw, and it's grass-fed, so that's a great way to not compromise on those things. Something that we're hoping to do is have a garden. The more we can make ourselves and the closer to the form God made it as possible, the better we're going to be.
I raise a garden every year, try to.
That's right, you go to the farmer's market.
Yeah, I sell up there in Rocky Mount doing it. So, and I've got a couple of friends, Gary Lynch, who is Hen Fruit Farm. He has eggs, and I get eggs from him, and then his neighbor also has free-range chickens.
Would you mind sending me an email with if they have enough to, do they want their information to be out there? They're selling to the public?
I'm sure Gary probably would. Well, he's in the process. Hens, you have to rotate your chickens.
Yeah.
About every 2 years, you have to. The old hens go away, and you get new pullets in, and you bring them up. And he's in the process now. His old hens are gone. His hens from last year he don't put lights in them to make them lay. He does it. They're all natural. If you put lights up in there with it, they'll lay more.
Gotcha.
Keep heat in there with it. But he's got 50 pullets ordered right now. He's waiting on Southern States actually to get a 200 pullet order before they will order.
Okay.
So he's
working on being able to.
Yeah, he's rotating his chickens right now. Is what
if you would talk to any of those people, and anyone for that matter, we really learn a lot from each other, and everybody in here I could probably go through and say someone has given me pointed me in a direction that's been really helpful. So let's do that for each other. That's one of the things that I'd like to see is if anyone has stuff, shoot me an email. If you send it to me, I'm going to assume that it's okay to share it with everybody else. If not, and it's a question, just make sure you say this is for you. But if someone sends a resource, say, hey, here's where I get my eggs from, or farmers market things, let us know, and I'll put that all together in an email and send it out.
Yeah, we home can.
It's awesome.
A lot. And I've got probably 5 cases of tomato juice right now. I would love to move up your road. Somebody who likes tomato juice. I've got we make salsa. Of course, we can green beans, anything out of the garden.
Okay.
Pickles. I do all kinds of different kinds of pickles.
Put whatever your contact, where you would want people to contact you, and I'll send that out too. If it's an email or a phone number.
Okay.
Yeah, and utilize each other for that.
Okay.
Did you say Gonna ask something back there? No.
Just stretching one side.
Yes.
Is there any kind of vegetable a person could eat to get the same amount of protein as you talk about the roast beef and the chickens and the
Are you a vegetarian?
No.
No, okay.
I'd like to be. I can't put up with the gas.
Yeah. Some people, sometimes it's hard. Cooking the food is sometimes easier to digest because it helps to break down things. You know, if you're having a hard time digesting the vegetables, even though raw vegetables have the live enzymes which are necessary for digestion. So there's a little bit of a play in there, but cooking them can be easier on your digestive tract for a while, and then even taking some digestive enzymes. But it is harder to get protein, especially if you don't eat cheese or dairy, if you don't eat any animal products at all. If you eat animal products, cheese and dairy are a great way to get your protein. If you're completely vegan, then you're going to be looking at things like nuts and seeds, that you're going to rely a whole lot more on nuts and seeds to be able to get the amount of protein. And vegetables have protein in them. We tend to think they don't at all. Picture a cow, where we get our beef. What does a cow eat? Grass. So sometimes we think, okay, especially if you're a bodybuilder, I need lots and lots of meat to build my muscles. Well, cows and horses are very muscly, and they eat grass. So, and think about when you want to fatten up a cow for slaughter, what do you feed them? Grain. That's how you get fat marbled through the organs. We don't want that happening in us. That's another reason that kind of swings us back to grains. You think, well, they're not that high in fat, but the way that they're processed in the body pack fat onto a cow or a horse. So vegetables are our best source. We need variety, though, because that's where we get our micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals. And remember, we're unique. None of us are exactly the same. It's why there's so much mixed information out there. Because I might say what worked for me, now I create a program, this is how everybody should eat, and I can tell you exactly what you should eat at every time of day, and it might not work for you. But it worked great for me, and I would say, well, something's wrong with you. So we have to become, or I suggest we become a student of our own bodies and find out. Some people do really well with very low animal protein, and other people don't. So it's okay. Failure is one of the greatest ways to learn. Try something, and if you say, boy, you know, if you wanted to try to be a vegan or a vegetarian, and you went that way for a little while and really learn how to do it well, and you still think, I just don't feel very well, and then maybe you add in some animal protein and you find, wow, I do really well with just a little bit of animal protein. There's some studies out there, blood type, there's the Eat for Your Type, and different, like the Mediterranean diets, all of those. There's some credible studies out there all the way around that some people digest certain types of proteins better than others. So that's one book you can read. I did some continuing ed on that, Eating for Your Type, your blood type. Anybody else? I want you to be able to go home and say, okay, I'm going to make some changes if I need to. If you might just be here saying, you know, I'm just supporting you and want to hear what you're doing and I'm learning a little bit. If you're in a place saying, I either want to lose some weight or I really want to regain some health in my body, I recommend that you train your body to become metabolically flexible, because it's how you were created. And if we function the way we were created, just like this camera or this pen or anything that was designed by somebody has a certain way it was designed to be used. If we don't use it that way, we're going to wear it out in some way. It might work. This thing might prop a door open, and it might work, but it's probably going to, after a while, break, because it was meant to write with. And if I leave the top off of it, because it's just a pain to put the top back on, well, it's going to dry out. It was designed for me to put the top back on to keep it working. So it takes a bit of time to figure that out, but ask yourself, what am I doing? What do I need? And then this may be really helpful for you, because I have seen that most people in this country in particular are glucose burners, sugar burners. We don't burn fat, so we're not functioning the way we were designed. We want to function like this, because guess what? If I never take the lid off the pen, I'm not really using it for what it's made for either. I want to be able to use it the way it was designed. That's the real purpose of going back to becoming metabolically flexible, is we're using our bodies the way they were designed. then we can go without food for a time because our body will very easily shift over into burning fat, and we can have times where we have more of a feast and we have the abundance of fruits and things that might be seasonal. And that's another piece, is eat seasonally. It's harder to do nowadays because in Walmart, everything's in season, year round. It's always there. All right. Any last question on it? One more question if there's any? Yeah.
This is a little bit different, but do you know much about the Whole30 diet?
You do, don't you?
I don't know a lot in depth about it, no.
Okay.
Well,
I've just used some of the recipes for other things that I've been doing.
Yeah.
so I did the Whole30, and so it's a 30-day period. It really helps you to find different foods that might affect your body because you reintroduce
It's an
different food
elimination
groups.
diet, right? And then a reintroduction. Okay.
Yeah, so then you can kind of see maybe your body doesn't do well with the gluten, or maybe it doesn't do well with legumes, different things like that. So that kind of can give you an idea of a starting point to what kind of foods. If you're really wanting to do something, it's a 30-day period where you eat vegetables, and you can have some fruits, and you can have meat. No dairy, no grains, no sugar, and you just kind of, you feel great. Like at first you might have some of that hangry headaches and, have some.
What fats can you eat in that?
You would do like stuff like ghee or coconut oil, olive oil.
So in that transition time, you could use some MCT oil, some coconut oil to help you get over it.
And so you can get into ketosis too by doing it. And when you reintroduce, you can reintroduce back the dairy because you've taken dairy out. Because some people, dairy really affects them. I didn't know that certain things affected me until I did it. So
that's a really
helpful.
great thing. Reintroducing foods is when you see difference. Eliminating them, you might start feeling really great, and then if you reintroduce something, you'll really know. Go, oh my goodness! You'll usually have a strong reaction. So that's a great way to test certain foods and to see what you do well on.
And what was that called?
Whole30.
Whole30.
Yeah, and there's websites and groups on Facebook, and there's a book. So there's a lot of people out there that can help you with that and different things, recipes. Because the hard thing is you can't buy like your ketchup and everything. You have to really think about your condiments and all the sugar intake because you get rid of it all, and it's just kind of like a total reset in a sense.
Really helpful way to find those hidden things that you're eating
because you're like,
Start reading the labels.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. All right. Well, on that last note, then, if you say I really want to become keto adapted in between this class and the next class, the emails. Is everyone getting the emails? And I don't think I have contact information for you, but I'll give you a paper here. I'll get it in a second. Everyone else getting the emails that I'm sending out? Are you on the list yet? Oh, you will be. Okay, got that. I'll put some information in there. So we're hopefully leaving here going, okay, I want to try to do this, and you've got a basic idea of what to do. Do you feel that way? Is there anything else I can give you right now to say, I know I want to drop my carbs, increase my healthy fats, go longer period without eating at night, stretch out the beginning and the end of that, so you give your body a chance to clean the fuel out of the car, and then you're going to play with those macros. But I would suggest if you have done the first challenge, which is to get rid of or limit your wheat and sugars, second challenge would be see if you can get your body into ketosis. If you have done it before and you already know, give yourself a chance to go back in for a week, 2, 3, and 4 weeks. If you've never done it before, challenge yourself to say, okay, I want to give this a shot and see how I feel. If I can drop those pounds and start to feel a little bit better. And then we'll walk you through it for the next 4 weeks. All right? Thank you all. Very good. Thank you.